Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of HBO Max's Generation, episode 12 and 13, an episode in which we see a witch coven get created, but also a boy getting in the way of three best friends, and then we also see Megan maybe opening up to the idea of Nathan being bisexual. We're going to break it all down here in the spoiler review, but before we do so, make sure you all are following me on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this review, make sure to give it a thumbs up, share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate the support. And in the comments, let's discuss both of these episodes. Did you like one more than the other? What did you think about episode 12 and this three best friends and Cooper getting away between Delilah, Arianna, and Naomi? And then of course, let's talk about which was my favorite of the two, episode 13, all the different, reveals that we get. We see Riley having a moment with Greta. We see obviously Bo learning about the pretend boyfriend situation between Chester and Nathan. Let's discuss it all in the comments below. So I definitely enjoyed both episodes, but like I just said, I think episode 13 was just, it had a lot of flavor. It had the funny moments, the good intimate moments. Of course, it has Anna and Riley, so you already know if you guys have been watching my reviews, I'm a big fan of those characters. But again, even with episode 12, which we'll talk about here in a minute, I love the kind of friendship and what happens when you let people get in the way of friendship. And then obviously we get a little bit more from Naomi and Arianna, who were kind of absent in the return of the show. So really good episodes, but episode 13, which I can't wait to break down, was really my favorite between two. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So let's briefly go over episode 12, which was titled The High Priestess. We really kind of focus on Arianna. We haven't seen her really so far in the return of the show, so it was nice to kind of catch up with her. And again, she's not my favorite character in the show, but she definitely gives me one of the most laughs of the show, because she's just such like an out there character, says some really ridiculous things, and just the way she kind of treats her dads and just the stuff she says. She's a very interesting and funny character, so it was nice to kind of catch up with her. But we just see her immediately as we open up the episode that she is tired and feels suffocated by all the men energy in her house with her two dads. And then we transition from that moment to her going to school and being interrupted by one of the guys talking about the forum and the dance they have setting up. So again, it's just setting the stage for her just needing her friends, Naomi and Delilah. And we see ultimately what happens with those three friends, because they let a boy get in the way of their friendship, which we'll talk about here. But we see this rumor going around in school regarding around a girl that gave birth to a child in a Panda Express. And we obviously know that they were referring to Delilah, which I guess brings up the point, did one of the three girls, or I should say one of the two girls between Naomi and, Arianna, they let that slip? Obviously, someone could have seen what went down in the first part of this season with them obviously leaving the bathroom. But I'm just wondering, did someone, and this just speaks to the greater group, did someone let it slip out of what happened to Delilah and the child? Let me know you guys' thoughts on that. But nonetheless, we see that Naomi and Arianna agree at first to keep this secret away from Delilah. And as we kind of move forward throughout the episode, we see the three of them having this kind of witch sleepover and creating their own kind of the craft type of moment and creating their own coven. And they see that their periods are all synced together, and they ultimately come up with this idea to make a spell for Cooper, and particularly to have Cooper fall in love with Naomi, which again, if you guys seen the craft, that is something you don't play around with. But we see ultimately what they end up using the spell for, as we see them putting this cast and a spell, this protection spell on Delilah about this whole rumor of her being, letting the kid go and having a kid in the mall and all that stuff. But then they ultimately tell the truth about Naomi, and Delilah come to terms in regards to Delilah does like Cooper, and they decide to put their spell, this protection spell, set up for using it on Cooper and fall in love with Cooper, but they're going to use it for Delilah to not get the rumor out there and to get all the information out there, because she doesn't want kids to make fun of her. She doesn't want her parents to, even though we know from meeting her parents last week that they seem to be very open parents, very loving parents, but still, with her giving up the child, I would imagine her parents would want to have kept the child and have the kid grow up in that kind of loving environment. So it was kind of interesting to see, again, the craft going at first, and I want to fall in love with Cooper, to ultimately them deciding to use their powers of their new coven and their new witch abilities to do something to kind of keep her secret from getting out there, which, we kind of see that kind of take place. And Delilah goes back to her home. She gets the umbilical cord that we saw her put in the beginning of the season in the freezer to make sure that this spell does come to fruition. We see them perform the protection spell in the bathroom in which she gave birth to the young baby, and then we ultimately see them kind of veering off from this really kind of intimate moment between the three girls to the two girls, Delilah and Naomi, coming up with this idea to have a three-way date, three-way situation to invite Cooper to the formal dance, which obviously means there's three people involved in this relationship, leaving out Arianna, which then we kind of wrap up the episode where it goes back to her being kind of frustrated with her dads, to her dad's coming in the room, kind of comforting her, but also realizing that she's kind of the third wheel. She's kind of left out of the situation, which we kind of wrap the episode with Arianna asking to take pictures of Cooper accepting going to the dance with them, but she's obviously just like, we just had a great moment. We're a coven now. We put this protection spell on Delilah, but now I'm being forgotten about. She feels, obviously we know what happened with her in part one with thinking she was going to be maybe in something with Nathan, being broken up with Nathan last year, and now she's kind of going back into that cycle of feeling lonely and feeling like she doesn't have anyone to lean on, which she ultimately has this moment where she kind of lashes out at the kid that interrupted her at the beginning of the episode, asking her to the formal dance, and she ends up saying by the end of the episode that all boys are parasites and you should never let a boy get in the fear or get in the mix of your friendship, which is very true, and it'll be interesting to see based on this episode what happens with Arianna, Naomi, and Delilah after they ultimately maybe go on this date. Maybe they don't go on this formal dance, but it is really kind of sucks to see her being left out, even though she does have some mean moments. She says some very suspect things, but you never want someone to feel by themselves and feel lonely, especially after having that kind of really good intimate moment with those two other girls. So let's see what happens with Arianna and if she will continue to be best friends with the other two girls. But again, a decent episode. Not my favorite out of the two, but still some solid moments. But let's get to episode 13, which was titled There's Something About Hamburgers Mary. This was my favorite episode. This kind of checks off all the boxes. Again, like I said up top, it has Riley, it has Anna, it has Chester, three of my favorite characters in the episode. And I just love the pacing. I love what the episode has to talk about regarding love being complicated, acceptance, and just having a little bit more depth to me personally as far as between the two episodes. I really enjoyed this 13th episode, which let's just get right into the recap as we open up with, again, talking about the complications of love, and we get the classic generation flashback in which that was 12 hours into the episode. So we go back in time 12 hours later, which we see that she is preparing for this mother and son date night, which again, Megan is just so over the top. She always has these weird things that she wants to do with her daughter Naomi and Nathan. So we end up finding out that Nathan can't make it because he wants to attend this fundraiser for gay, queer, suicide prevention, which is held by my favorite character, Anna, who we'll talk about a little bit later. But Megan doesn't want him to go, but ultimately she gets the idea from her husband Mark to attend because Mark says that he thinks that Nathan is like subliminally telling his mom, like, I want you to attend to see this other side of my life. So she ultimately decides to go, which we cut to Mark and Megan attending this fundraiser. And then right off the bat, we see Mark getting flirted with some of the drag queens there, which I'm not going to lie, I might have mentioned in my review when we talked about it earlier this year. I think Mark might be into, men. I think he might be secretly closeted, and that might be a big reveal in this season. But he's definitely appreciating and enjoying the attention that he's getting right off the bat. So keep an eye on Mark. It'll be really interesting if that is something that they reveal, because obviously Nathan might feel more connected to his parents if one of his parents is ultimately bisexual or gay or closeted or whatever the case may be. But let me know your thoughts on Mark in the comments. But we enter the fundraiser, which again is set up by my favorite character, one of my favorite characters of the show, and that is Anna, which, by the way, I didn't know that the actress is actually a trans, which is just, I was reading a little bit about her and just saw her on social media. She just seems like such a great person. And again, I don't know if it's just a coincidence that her character and her in real life just seems so awesome to me. I just finding out about characters that you really enjoy and see that they're actually good people outside of what they do on the screen is really cool. But nonetheless, we see Megan trying to open up to her son more. We see the whole crew is essentially at this fundraiser, and we kind of get the classic generation thing when we see different perspectives of the same situation, the same night, night take place. So we see Megan is about to walk on stage, and she is called out to have this, as we saw at the beginning of the episode, love is complicated, but we cut to Greta, and this is where we get a little bit of what Greta's up to in this episode. We see that she's upset because we see Luce left her on red, and we see that Luce, as we know last week, that she is just like, hey, do you like me? Do you not like me? I'm not going to play this whole, closeted lesbian situation. Let's just either be a couple or let's just move on with our lives. But it seems like she left Greta on red. And we see that briefly Riley kind of comes in, and we see that Anna has this kind of conversation about her being superstitious and all that fun stuff. But again, we'll talk about Riley here in a second. But we do get Luce come into the situation. I don't want to say she confronts Greta, but she does have a conversation with Greta yet again, like she did last week, in regards to, do you actually like me, Greta? And we see Greta say, yeah, I definitely do like you. But then she, Luce decides to head out. She blows her a kiss. So again, it'll be really interesting to see if Greta ultimately does go and decide to be a couple, to embrace what Luca, or to say what Luce is giving her, or again, we'll talk about Riley here in a second, but it's really interesting to see this kind of three-way love triangle being developed between these three characters. So briefly going back to Greta, we see Arianna invites her to the formal dance, and we see Greta does accept. Going back to Greta, we see that her and Riley have a bit of a moment, have a bit of a conversation in which we see Greta initially tell Riley that it wasn't going back to the field trip that they had, last semester, that it wasn't that she didn't like Riley, and she kind of cuts off there because unfortunately we see from, I didn't even know that he was in I don't remember seeing him, but Pablo, who is actually, if you guys watch Love, Victor season 2, Raheem, it seems like Pablo and Riley are now a thing, which means that maybe the whole are Greta and Riley going to come together, but no, the show just keeps pulling them further and further apart, which is a really interesting moment there. But going back to one of my other favorite characters, we cut to Chester and get his perspective of the night, as we see Riley fills him in that he's going to have to put on the whole pretend thing on because Megan will be attending this party, and we see that Riley does tell him about Pablo and that she is seeing him. Cut to Chester explaining the whole situation to Bo in regards to explaining the whole date situation with Nate and how he's pretending to be his boyfriend, and as he's saying it out loud, he's realizing that, yeah, this does sound a little bit crazy, that the boy that's in love with me, I'm pretending to be his boyfriend, and I kissed him on our date night, which Bo admits that he was like so upset that night. He felt so bad at how their first date went, and in return, set it for Chester, even though we know Chester felt bad, but he decided to kiss Nate on the night that they had their bad date. So it's just like, question for you all that's watching is, if you were Chester, would you be that friend and help Nathan, even though we know Nathan loves Chester, or would you not be there for him? I'm just curious of what you guys would do in that situation. But as we wrap up the episode, we cut back to Megan, who's on stage at this point, and we see Chester tell Bo that he loves him. He admits his love to him, which again adds more kind of confusion, more fuel to the fire. We got another love triangle going on with Chester, Bo, and potentially Nathan, which I don't think is as strong as what's going on with obviously Greta, Riley, and Luce, but it's still something that I think by the end of the season, man, Nathan and Chester might be a thing. But nonetheless, we end the episode with Megan on stage talking about love is complicated, and she's singing You Gotta Be song, which is a great song, but she sounds terrible singing it because obviously she's kind of breaking down at this point because of she's just confused. And again, love is complicated. So again, this episode was my favorite out of the two. It poses a question: will Bo have any issues with this whole pretending boyfriend situation? What will happen with Greta and Riley now that Riley's seeing Pedro? Will this kind of push Greta towards Luce a little bit more? And of course, what's going to happen with Megan and her, being there for Nathan, accepting him for who he is, and all of the wonderful stuff that this show has to offer. So let me know your thoughts on the episode. Again, I enjoyed episode 12, but episode 13 might be my favorite episode of the second part of the return of the show so far. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, make sure to like, share, leave your thoughts in the comment section, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this review, and we'll see you in the next video.